Hello, everyone, and welcome to Growing Together, a gardening podcast with me, John Lamb, and Don Kinsler, a lifelong gardener and the North Dakota State University Extension horticulturist for Cass County. Don, how you doing today?
Well, I'm doing well, and I know spring is upon us because I saw the first dandelions blooming. and of course, it's going to be interesting today. We're going to talk weed control with Lilly Bina, who works in the same office as I do, NDSU Extension. Lilly is the Agriculture Natural Resources Agent for Cass County. So it'll be interesting to get into some of this weeds because all of us gardeners in our yards and gardens and flower beds deal with weeds. So I saw the first wonderful dandelions blooming. How about you, John? How's everything doing in your yard?
You know, it's just every day you see something coming up more and more.
True.
I mean, just some of the things we're starting to see are goat's beard coming up. Our bleeding hearts are they're not coming into shape, but they are growing so high. We're starting to see the iris you talked about last week. Mine are starting to peek through. You're starting to see the tips of the hostas coming out. So
peonies are poking through.
Peonies are coming out. Yeah. So it's all looking good. And you know, it's funny because here we're recording just before Mother's Day. And normally we would be talking about like going out and getting plants on Mother's Day. And I don't know if I'm really ready to plant yet right around Mother's Day.
I got to tell you a little secret. I don't trust early May, but I've already bought plants.
Okay.
And we're going to buy some more plants, obviously. But what I do is use this time to toughen them in, harden them off. So I shop the selection is best, harden them off, maybe pinch them back a little bit, pinch the petunias, and then when I am ready to plant, then they'll be ready too. They'll be tougher and better branching.
That'll be good. All right. Well, first of all, before we get into our talk with Lilly, you've got a question from a listener.
Yes. Karen wrote in and said, "Hi, I'm a master gardener intern in Burleigh County, North Dakota. I love your podcast. I have a question about a lilac tree in my yard." And I should mention, she sent photos. And this is an old-fashioned purple lilac. You know, it's not a Japanese tree lilac, but it's in the form of a tree. It's been pruned. Okay, so we'll continue with the letter. "Years ago, the owner of my house started to prune the bush into a tree-like shape. It's now over 12 feet tall, has a pleasant shape, provides nice privacy for our bedroom window, and the flowers are still very lovely. It does have the problems associated with a bush that's been pruned into tree shape. Lots of the branches die off, and it's bare at the base. An arborist suggested the easiest thing would be to rejuvenate the lilac and start all over again, but I don't feel ready to let it go. This spring, after the buds are done, I was going to work hard at pruning it and try to encourage more branching down farther so it doesn't look so bare. Do you have any suggestions?" Signed, Karen. And so Sharon sent photos here. And so this is the old-fashioned purple type lilac that typically we see growing as a large shrub. In 12 feet, they can get 12 feet. Now, my parents rarely disagreed on anything, but how to prune a lilac was one of those things. My dad grew up on the East Coast. He felt that an old-fashioned lilac should have all the bottom branches removed, so it was kind of like a multi-trunked little tree, and all the foliage and the flowers were up on top. My mom grew up in North Dakota here with lilacs more like the outer row of a shelter belt, you know, where you have the green foliage all the way from the top all the way down to the bottom ground, and the outer face is covered with lilac blossoms. So what to do? Well, Mom won. And but the lilac that Karen is mentioning here, the previous owners have removed all the lower growth, all the suckers coming out of the base, all the little branchlets coming out along the trunk. So it's got, two or three or four maybe main trunks, and all of the foliage and the blossoms are up on the top. Now, again, that was my dad's idea of a beautiful lilac. And that's, there's no right or wrong. But Karen is a little concerned that the base looks kind of bare. Mm-hmm. And so wondering about that. Now, if you do not continue to remove the sprouts that come along those trunks, I think it will develop a bushier habit farther down. And lilacs tend to grow up some suckers from the base. So, Karen, if you enjoy having something more around the base, there's nothing wrong with letting some of that develop and stop pruning that away. Or if you like to maintain it in that kind of tree-like shape, maybe plant something else around it. Looks like it's casting some shade on the ground. Hosta might do beautifully under that, or some low-growing viburnums, other shrubs that tolerate some shade. So you might be able to have your lilac tree and eat it too.
Well, and you know what?
So by planting something else kind of around the base, it may look less kind of stark to a person.
One thing to consider too is looking at these photos. It's really close to the house.
It is.
So some people don't, they want to have some open around the house. They don't want to have like too much bush there.
That's true.
So it is also really close to a window too. So, that's dependent on, kind of what somebody wants out of their home and what they want from that kind of curb appeal.
Wouldn't you envision some hosta planted down
really
around
nice.
the base? I think that would fill in the base of that. And so, guest Lily, what's your favorite way of growing an old-fashioned lilac?
Well, where I'm from, they are like what you said. They're right along a shelter belt, and they look more bushy. That's actually the first time I've ever seen one looking like
one
that.
Trimmed like that. But yeah, that was my dad's ideal picture right there of what a lilac tree would be formed too. What a lilac shrub.
I do think it's very pretty.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And it also is very tall. It's the house is about
12 feet. If you did nothing to an old-fashioned lilac, even letting grow as a shrub, they'll get about 12 feet. That's about the maximum height that one would get on those. So interesting. And if anybody would like to send questions, something that's done very well in your yard garden, send us an email, donald.kinsler, KINZLER, @ndsu.edu.
Also saying, pictures are great too.
Oh, pictures are great. Because Karen's photo here, that said the story. It pictured exactly what it would be hard to describe otherwise.
Because also looking at it, you can tell that it's healthy.
Yes, exactly. And I could see how it's a little bare around the bottom, and I could maybe suggest some things that would make it a little more appealing.
Well, Don, why don't you introduce our guest?
Yes, well, welcome, Lilly Bina.
Thank you.
Again, Lilly is just down the hall from me in our office, our NDSU Extension office in Cass County, and your responsibility is agriculture and natural resources.
Yep.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, where are you from?
Well, I'm originally from Lincoln, North Dakota, up in Walsh County.
And so Walsh County, what would that be? 3 or so counties north, 3 or 4 counties north of Fargo area?
There's 2 in between.
2 in between.
Yeah. Yep. Trail and Grand Forks.
Yeah. Did you grow up on a farm?
Yep, I did. I grew up on a seed farm. We grew a very wide variety of crops. So.
Oh, great. Well, did you garden too with your folks?
Oh, yeah. We had a very big garden.
Yeah. No, vegetables?
Yep, vegetables. We have about 10 apple trees, raspberry bushes.
Oh, nice.
And actually, fun fact, my grandma and grandpa used to have like a 10-acre strawberry patch.
Oh, they did?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very big.
Did they do like farmers markets with it, or was that just for their own?
It was kind of like a you pick. This was before I was born.
Sure.
But yeah. So strawberries are a big thing in our family.
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now I'm hungry for fresh
fresh
grown.
garden strawberry.
Yes, we had some from the store and they don't compare.
Nope.
And that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And so what kind of got you into wanting to go into agriculture?
Well, I guess I just grew up around it my whole life, and it's kind of everything I've ever known. I worked with my dad every day. I drove grain cart, watched the grain cleaners, all the things.
Yeah. So where did you graduate from?
I graduated from NDSU with a
What was your major?
Crop and weed sciences.
Oh,
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
Well, that makes you that makes you well accustomed to our topic today about weed control in yards and gardens. And so, anything else growing up that kind of led you to now? Most kids growing up in farms know their county agent.
Oh, yeah.
As they used to be called, the county agent. Of course, now they're agriculture natural resource.
Yeah.
So did you ever think that you might be in that position as being the
Honestly,
county agent?
I never thought I would, but I'm very glad I am. I grew up very close with Brad Drummond. I was on his crop judging team and his land judging team, and that's what I did.
And he was the longtime agriculture agent there in Walsh County. Sure. And how long have you been in this position now in Cass County?
It's been a little bit over a year, like a year and 2-3 months.
Well, the reason John and I thought it would be very fascinating to visit with you is because weeds.
Everybody's favorite topic.
Tough topic to bring up. Yeah.
If there is one thing in my own yard and garden and flowers, if there is one thing that detracts from my fun, and that is weeds. Now, of course, in the garden, when you're getting them when they're just small, just germinating out of the soil, it's actually kind of fun. I've described it as eating popcorn. You're going along, you're getting them. But man alive, if they get ahead of you, or when some of these weeds pop up and just become so annoying. So we thought it'd be very interesting and timely because the weeds oftentimes will grow faster than many of the other things.
Yep.
And so, it's interesting, Lily. One of the things that I enjoy is when people send me photos of a plant and they ask, is this a weed? Well, first of all, what is exactly a weed? How do you describe a weed?
Well, people have different definitions, but my definition is a plant that's out of place. So one person's weed might not be someone else's weed. For example, my grandma would leave milkweed in her garden because it attracts butterflies.
Sure.
Now, if my grandpa saw that, that would be gone.
Yeah, that might not be his
So it's
idea.
really, yeah. And then weeds are also something that kind of hurts the things that are growing around them. Maybe by taking up extra water, extra space, maybe creating extra shade so the plants that you want to grow aren't growing.
Because it seems just by their nature, they outcompete some of the other things.
Yep, they can. They're a lot hardier. Excuse me. They're a lot hardier than a lot of other plants.
Yeah, exactly. So. Deep-rooted in things. What I get kind of a kick out of, the question, is this a weed? Botanically, it's not like there was a group of plants that as plants originated here. This is this good-for-nothing set of plants that we're going to call weeds. And, so I'm sure look at dandelions,
Mm-hmm.
the history of those. They were introduced onto this continent as a medicinal. And so I like your definition of a plant that's out of place on that. So, isn't that interesting? When I answer that question, is this a weed? Sometimes I'll ask, is it growing where you want it?
Mm-hmm.
And so too, so I know what people mean when is this a weed? They're meaning, is this something that I should get rid of?
Yep.
And so when we consider the whole area of, how do we deal with weeds? There's some basic information that people kind of should know, like, categories of weeds or something. How do you start by describing to people how to control weeds?
Well, weeds kind of come down to two different categories. You have like broadleaf weeds, which are going to be your dandelions, Canada thistle, plantains, clovers, and spurges. So those are controlled. If you were to use herbicide, those are controlled with a different herbicide than like a grass would be. So grasses like your foxtails, crabgrass, quackgrass, those are different.
Sure. So right from the onset, you kind of can divide weeds into two categories, the broadleaf and the grassy type. So like, for example, when I go to the garden center and I'm looking for something to control dandelions, so I can look at that. Or grasses. I can look for some grass killers. Are there some products that will zap everything? So is the different herbicides?
I believe so. You can mix. There's certain mixtures that you can get.
Sure, that'll kind of control either. And so if we kind of take a look at that, for example, quackgrass growing in a peony. In peonies is always a hassle. Maybe the peony was planted on a cemetery, and of course, then the grass just naturally grows in. So are there weed killers that would target that grass specifically without harming the peony? Yeah, but now, as you mentioned, some of those herbicides will go, are specifically for that. And so sometimes we've discussed, like Ortho has one called Grass Be Gone.
Yep.
Yeah. So then, like you indicated, those will target only that class.
Yeah,
kind
they'll
of
only target the grasses and
of
not
weeds.
because peony would be a broadleaf.
Sure.
So
Yeah. Exactly.
Yep.
So then, following your separation into broadleaf grasses, then it won't kill the broadleaf peony.
Yeah, it'll kill the grass.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's an important definition when we're looking at that. And so maybe after a break, we could talk about weed control in lawns.
Yeah.
Because, of course, that you're dealing with grass, and a lot of the weeds popping up are the broadleafs that you described. And so right there you have a great big area separated immediately into grasses and broadleafs. So how about after a break, let's get into weed control in lawns.
Sounds good.
Local news affects your life. It gives you the confidence and clarity to make better decisions every day. You can support that with a digital subscription. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to take advantage of our introductory offer, just $6 for 6 months.
All right, we're back this week. We've got a guest in the studio, Lilly Bina, an extension officer, extension agent. It sounds like do you have badges? I don't know if we've.
Well, we actually do.
Okay, yes, you do. You have to have
As an agent,
clearance,
we need a badge. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it is a security building, so we do have a badge.
But you're a weed specialist, and one of the things we wanted to talk about is weed control in lawns today. So talk a little bit about that. Like, what are the things that people should know about weed control in lawns?
Well, I guess the main thing to say is the first thing you don't want to do right away is jump to herbicide, because there's other ways that you can control the weeds in your lawn. For example, keeping a fuller lawn will be better. Watering it once in a while, but deep watering it, not watering it once every week, just lightly. And like preventing the bare spots in your lawn is also, because that's where the weeds are going to grow, is when you have a bare spot. So having a full, healthy lawn is really going to help you.
Yeah, and I like your idea of what you mentioned with the taller lawn, because we've discussed that in the past too, how that taller lawn shades out
out the weeds and
competes the weeds.
Yep, doesn't let them come in. So a thick, healthy lawn, that's really what everybody's goal is anyway. So that's the good part. And then there's also, you can use herbicide. There's herbicide that you can buy at the store, like a normal store. Those typically have like 2,4-D in them, MCPP, trichloropier. Sorry, I can't say that very well. But the most effective herbicide for like broadleafs in your grass, they'll contain a mixture of 2 or 3 herbicides in order to control all of the broadleafs.
Yeah, that's great. And, I appreciated your comment that a person doesn't necessarily have to jump to herbicides right away, because I know the movement now really is a safe and judicious use of herbicides. And I like your idea that we don't necessarily have to use that as a first alternative.
One thing I really like to point out is prevention is really what you're kind of trying to aim for, because say you let your grass go for a year, it's going to take a long time to get it back. Once a weed gets there, it's there for a little bit. It doesn't go away.
Yeah, exactly. And even like dandelions, my gosh, they produce so much seed, and pretty soon you can have so many. But, like you're mentioning too, and some weeds can be dug out, the dandelion digger, it maybe doesn't get all that root out, but if you keep on those, if a person only has a dozen or so dandelion plants in a yard, a person can pop them out with that as deep as you can.
The other ones I can think of are like common burdock. That's got a big tap root, or what else? Thistles. Those are hard to get rid of
thistles.
too.
they are so hard to get out of a lawn. And I got to tell you a quick little story on thistles in our lawn, because we inherited this area, and I know there was thistles on it before, and so and they came back from roots. And I've tried different things. And so late last summer, I put a little bit of glyphosate on each
thistle.
Each
Yep,
thistle.
Spot treated.
And I thought I was being really, really careful.
Were there footprints on the lawn?
But now well, that's a story for another day. Footprints on the lawn. If you walk across where you treated, and then
you start to
spread. I've done that. But anyway, so I have a little extended circular spot around where I did each thistle. I thought I was being cautious, but I must have had a little overspray. So far, knock on wood, the thistles haven't come back, but neither has the grass that I killed in the little circle. So, I should have targeted a little more targeted.
What would you use? Like what do they call it? A little dropper or something like that?
Yeah, you only have to get a little bit of glyphosate down in the middle of that thistle.
I've heard of people using like a paintbrush where they put it right in the middle and yeah. But then again, if it drips off the paintbrush somewhere you don't want it.
That paintbrush is a good way to target it because you see, I did use a little sprayer, and sometimes you can't always see those little invisible droplets that maybe drift just a little bit.
We'll talk about drift.
Yeah, exactly. And so on lawns, are you familiar with the weed and feed products at all that have the granular herbicide?
I've looked into those a little bit. I'm not super familiar with those, but
and now tell me, but I get a fair amount of emails from people that said that their weed and feed, the granular that you put on, that's a combination of fertilizer and weed killer, that it doesn't work. But now, from your knowledge of the weed control part of that, the label always indicates that your lawn should be wet. And because those granules must have to stick onto the weed.
Yep, and then they have to absorb.
Oh, sure.
So, yeah.
So that would be why they tell you that the lawn and the weeds should be wet.
Yep.
Oh, sure, so that the little granule sticks.
It's like when you spread fertilizer on a field. You need a rain to soak it in, really. Otherwise,
sure. Yeah,
what good is it doing sitting there?
Sitting there. Yeah, exactly. So, your word, the absorption is key there. I think sometimes we have the impression that a weed and feed might prevent weeds, but I think you're key then that actively growing weeds have to absorb that product.
Yep.
Yeah. So, is there anything else on lawn weed control that you wanted to mention?
Well, I guess just remembering when you're doing it and when the right timing is. You want to do it on a day where it's roughly 60 to 80 degrees, little to no wind. You want the weeds to actually be there. You don't want to be spraying your grass and there's not a weed, because why are you spraying then?
Well, yeah, good point.
Yep. And then typically no rain expected for several hours, so it can sink into the plant and the plant can absorb it. So
sure. What is the kind of temperature? Is there a target kind of temperature during the day that the weeds are absorbing best?
60 to 80. I would say a little warmer, like 70, but
oh, sure.
Yeah.
This is a curiosity for maybe this question for both of you, because we've talked about lawn quite a bit on this show. As somebody who owns dogs, and now with the snow going, you're seeing the spots in the lawn.
Sure.
And you're talking about the prevention is kind of the best way to do it. So I'm looking at spots in the lawn. You don't want them to be bare, yet it's still too early to really be seeding. Is there anything to be doing now when it's still kind of cool? What should I be doing should I just be prepping that area by raking up all the dead grass and hoping new grass grows in? And any thoughts on that?
That's kind of what I would think.
Okay.
There's a bare spot, but if you keep prepping it and you know that spot's bare and you're watching it, then
and flushing with lots of water helps too.
Okay.
Get the urine and the compounds with that get kind of diluted and watered on down. That helps also. As long as we're talking about weed control in lawns, each year I get emails from people that had a lawn care company or maybe a well-meaning neighbor that applied herbicide to their lawn, and now their trees and shrubs are curling, maybe their vegetable garden, the tomatoes are curling on up from herbicide damage. So what are some ways that anyone applying herbicide, and you've touched on some of these already, but what are some ways that we can really try to mitigate any possible problems?
Well, I would highly suggest not spraying on a windy day. We're here in Fargo. We know it can get pretty windy. That's really the biggest one. You can also use coarser sprayer droplets. So those are bigger. So then they fall. There's more gravity pulling them down to the plants. You also want your spray nozzles closer to the ground and not 6 feet up in the air, because that's going to cause a lot more drift than if you're closer to the ground.
Well, I like that idea of the larger spray droplets, so they're going to fall down to the ground. Because each year, again, I get emails from people who had a lawn care company do their lawn, and all of a sudden, right beside the lawn, their tomatoes are curling up. So I suppose that the little invisible droplets that were tiny probably wafted onto where they weren't meant to go. Whereas I suppose a big, large, coarse droplet, like you mentioned, would tend to fall just down where it was intended to go. I also liked your comment about no need to spray where there aren't weeds.
Yeah.
And because, those herbicides, like you said, they need to be absorbed into the leaf. And so they aren't really preventing weeds. So if there's no weeds in a spot, then sense.
Why are you spraying it?
Yeah, then why is the person spraying?
You also have to think about the cost of the chemical. Do you really need to be spraying your whole tank out on something that has no weeds?
Exactly.
The other thing I thought of is when you're damaging other plants, maybe you didn't clean your sprayer out good enough the time before. So just thinking about that, point. If you follow the label, usually it tells you how to clean your sprayer out after. So
I love that idea. And that is why I bought two 2-gallon pump sprayers.
Yep, because then you
one for herbicides, the weed killers, and one for my insect sprays.
Yep.
Because I am so paranoid that I'm not going to get that one cleaned out enough for my weed killer, and then I'm going to go spray my potatoes and kill off my potato crop. I love that idea, but a good cleaning. What is the recommended way? If a person just has one sprayer, and you're going to be using it for insecticides, herbicides, what is the proper way to clean out or rinse out a sprayer?
Well, for some chemicals, it's different, but you can use like ammonia and water, swirl it around, spray it out through the nozzle, maybe doing that a couple times just to make sure it's really clean.
Sure, good idea.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've done that and I've sprayed it out on a little patch of weeds just to see, did I get it rinsed out or am I going to kill those weeds?
Yeah.
And I like that idea of making sure that a person is totally getting that clean. How about farm type chemicals? Because I get interesting emails.
Oh yeah.
And another one is that from somebody that's got lawns says, a friend of mine got this farm chemical from an elevator, and he gave me a little bit in a jar here. And so, can I use this I got thistles in my yard?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't grow up on a farm, but living in the area, we are an agricultural area, so you hear about these things, and you got to think, okay, well, if I go to like one of the big farm stores and see something, they're not all the same, though, are they?
Yeah, and if
they're not.
And if a farmer buddy I know has this in a big 2.5-gallon jug, and he says it works good in thistles, he gives me a little bit in a glass jar. Can I use that? So, what about that, Lilly?
Well, the most important thing with farm herbicides is following the label. With all herbicides, follow the label. You don't want to be spraying too much, and you don't want to be spraying too little, because that's not going to control the weeds, and that leads to herbicide resistance, which is not good. I guess on the label it will say if it's supposed to be used on a lawn or a garden.
Good point.
You have to make sure that it's on there. Actually, Dawn, you mentioned milestone the other day, and I actually found out that that's technically not labeled for lawns.
Right.
So, yeah.
Because that's a good example of one that I've had people write in and say, my farmer buddy uses Milestone. It gave me a little bit. Can I use that? But when you read the label, it says not to be used because
for pasture land or rangeland.
Exactly, and not lawns, because of the potential problems that could result. And so I like your idea or your recommendation of following that label, because it is a legal document, isn't it?
It's the law. Label is law. That's what we always get told.
Yeah, and if a person goes against that law, if there's any problems, such as drifting onto the neighbor, so it is a really serious. So thank you for bringing up that label. Yep. The label point about
the other thing about farm herbicides, just to keep in mind, is they have a long soil residual more than all the other things that you would use. And then you're maybe more likely to injure plants around that maybe you weren't trying to. Yeah. And then also, when you think about like mulching, some people may mulch with their grass clippings. Well, it might be in those grass clippings now. And then you go put them in your garden. Yeah. And now you maybe just killed your garden. So that would
You've
be good.
seen my email inbox. Yes.
Yeah.
And the other thing, you mentioned the long residual. Every year there are problems with manure that has been used in garden and then causing herbicide damage because the residual, if that chemical was used on pasture land and it passes through the animal into the manure and is residual, has long residual in that. Mm-hmm. So your idea or your recommendation of the long residual of some of these, I think, is really important.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's not to be said that they can't be used. The most important part is just following the label, knowing what you're doing, asking questions if you have questions. So,
exactly.
Any other lawn or weed control tips?
No, I think that's about all I've got.
So let's move into the vegetable garden. So what are your thoughts on controlling weeds in vegetable gardens? Do you use herbicides, smothering, mulching? What techniques do you suggest?
Well, so first I'm going to start out with kind of what I started talking about with lawns is you don't want to jump right to the herbicide. Maybe rototill your garden before you go in. Maybe do it twice just to make sure you're knocking all those down. You can definitely mulch. There's other upsides to mulching besides just weed control, the moisture, all of that. Using straw. I wouldn't necessarily recommend grass clippings just in case there were weed seeds in those. You're going to spread weeds around your garden. Maybe hoeing and cultivating. That's probably the first step. But you definitely can use herbicides in vegetable gardens. I saw that herbicides with the active ingredient trifluralin. They're never easy names.
No,
those
never.
are typically used. I also thought of pre-emergence in a garden just to prevent weed seeds from completing the germination process because those aren't actually being sprayed on your vegetables. They're being sprayed on the ground before you plant.
Sure.
And so you're not spraying your direct vegetables.
Yeah, so you're mentioning the trifluralin. And I think they create those chemical names just to make us see if we can pronounce them. But yeah, you're mentioning the trifluralin. That's the active ingredient in preen, which is a commonly used around yards and gardens. And on some garden vegetables, it can be used around tomatoes and things. So the label, as you mentioned, Lily, the label indicates on there where they can be used. So pre-emergence that kill the weed seeds as they're germinating.
Yeah, but the other thing to remember with pre-emergence is they also have a residual. So you have to know before you plant, can I plant yet? So following that time frame, it'll all say it on the label. So yeah, if you follow the label, you'll be good.
Yeah. And then what about like in the perennial flower gardens? Any pointers on that? Because, with the perennials where they're coming up each year, it just seems weeds fit into those just so easily.
I know. Well, you mentioned grass be gone, so that helps with your grasses. Weeding, I grew up weeding flower gardens my whole life, so that's kind of how I grew up doing it. You can definitely use herbicides, maybe spot treating them, keeping it well contained so you don't drift onto all of your flowers because that's a little harder when you're in a flower garden. So,
I like your idea of weeding and just, spot spraying because, there isn't one magic chemical that can be put over the whole thing and it'll separate.
I wish there was.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice, Lily?
We'd all be happy.
Yeah, there's nothing that will magically separate the desirable plants from those that we don't want. And so sometimes just some good old-fashioned hoeing and weeding and digging and spot spraying. I really like those ideas.
So from time to time on the show, we'll talk, and when we've had guest Mary Helm on, Dawn and Mary Helm will talk about, first of all, your most despised weed. Like, what is the weed that you curse the most?
Pigweed, probably,
okay.
or what's it called? Marsh elder. When I was a little kid, I would have to go and chop marsh elder down in the field. And if my dad listens to this, he'll know what I'm talking about.
How about you? Yeah. How about you, John?
Purslane.
Oh, yeah, that's a bad one too.
It's tough, and we've got a relatively small yard, so it's just a matter of getting down on your hands and knees and doing it.
That's the hard part about that.
But
Purslane's hard because it's it grows flat on the ground. So
Right.
you have to go up on the dirt and you're scraping your hands and
And when you hoe it, if you don't physically remove it,
If you
it
don't
seems
get
like
the-
it just keeps growing.
Right.
Yep.
And I'd go along with
That's-
purslane also.
That's probably the hardest part about manual removal of weeds is if you don't get the whole root, maybe it'll keep growing or
Sure.
the whole plant.
So is weeding, because Dawn and Mary Helen talked about this, that it's kind of an enjoyable experience.
It's satisfying when
It's
you're done.
satisfying.
It
Is that
is,
your
yeah.
view too?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's something very therapeutic about it. Sitting in the garden, outside, birds are chirping. Maybe the insects are bothering you.
Yeah,
but
especially if you're kind of ahead of the game
Mhm.
and you feel like you're getting ahead of the game
when you
instead
get
of behind.
behind, it's
That's
it's no fun.
depressing.
Then it's
Mhm.
work.
It is, John.
Do you have a favorite weeding tool?
Actually, yeah, there's like a little hand hoe. They're super sharp. And when it just rips the weeds away.
Yeah, I got one of those.
Yeah, I have
mine
one of
is
those.
shaped like a little sickle.
Yep,
Kind of the
yep.
end is like a little
Yep.
sickle.
I bought
thing.
mine on Amazon. So,
Yeah, they are amazing.
Mhm.
Yep, I retired the old butcher knife that I used to use.
You brought it back to the kitchen?
Yeah, yes. And I opted for what you described, Lily.
I once got a hoe for my birthday as a joke. So,
Oh, now I would love that.
yeah, well, as
Oh, for
13-year-old, as a
Yeah.
joke.
Oh,
that
well,
wasn't
yeah.
All right. Well, let's take another quick break. When we come back, more with Lilly Bina.
If you're loving this podcast, be sure to check out our full lineup. From news and local politics to sports and true crime, find your next great listen right now at inforum.com/podcasts. That's inforum.com/podcasts.
All right, we're back, and this week we've got Lilly Bina, an extension agent from North Dakota. From North Dakota.
Yep.
Yeah, North Dakota, yeah. With us, and we're talking about kind of weed control this week. One of the things that's kind of come up more and more, that's becoming more and more, in general, people are looking at wellness and they want natural products. Are there natural weed killers that you've heard of that work, or some that you've heard of that don't work? What are your thoughts on those?
Well, Dawn has mentioned vinegar and salt and dish soap, but honestly, I don't know if I really believe in them. I think they might help when the weeds are really small, but for grand control, I don't know if it's actually getting total control of weeds. But
Yeah, and it's interesting to follow on Facebook. I belong to a few gardening groups, and when someone says, "Gosh, I've got this weed, what are some ways that I can control it, or something I can put on it?" And so a number of people will suggest that vinegar, dish soap, salt, and then others after that will say vinegar and salt are really hard on the soil. They can kill all the beneficial microorganisms out of it. Plus, they don't translocate through. They're not absorbed, like you indicated,
Yeah.
Lily. And so they don't kill root and all.
Mhm.
And so it might sound like vinegar and soap and salt are kind of natural. They're still chemicals. They're chemical formulas, so they're still chemicals. And so they don't seem to be as good as they maybe aren't as healthy as one might think on those. And so it makes for interesting discussion.
Yeah, I would say they harm the top leaves, but are you really getting down to the whole plant, killing the root, actually killing the weed? Is that weed going to come back?
Kind of a burn down, but don't kill the whole thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. The thing that alarmed me most about some of those, like the vinegar and that, is the harm that they could do to the soil. Sterilizing that soil of the beneficial microbes and
that's
things.
important.
And another one that I was actually sent a sample of was a kind of a heavy soap type thing. And it indicated it kills thistles all the way down to the roots. And I thought, well, boy, this is a miracle here. And so I applied it to the thistles in the lawn, and, well, it didn't work. The thistles came right back. And so then I used something that is absorbed better down into the roots of that. And but it is interesting. The different things. And I was happy to see on Facebook in the discussion of that, I was happy to see gardeners that said, oh, well, okay, well, here's why that's not always the best idea.
Yep.
Have you ever tried, sometimes you also see like boiling water on
I've
weeds?
never tried that.
I haven't tried it either.
I don't know how well that would work.
Well, yeah, exactly. If you've got to go out a bit from the house, if you're going to take a kettle with you, that's
you got to run in and out.
A kettle of boiling water.
I guess if you have one of those plug-in electric kettles and you've got plug-in outside that you have a little bit of access to, but still you're running around with hot water. That seems like a bad idea to begin with.
Well, and then if it's in the lawn, for example, if it kills that weed, you're probably going to kill the lawn.
Yeah.
But it's interesting too. You can burn down the tops of something, and so the roots are fine. Like, for example, did you ever burn the ditches out in the country?
Oh yeah, we did that once
to get rid of all the old dead stuff.
And then it comes back green.
Yeah, and it comes back better than ever.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these burn down weed controls, I mean, the thing comes back better than ever.
Yep.
Just the same way we used to burn ditches in the country to get them to come back extra nice. And so,
is there anything kind of this sounds silly because we've been dealing with weeds before we were all born, like farmers, people who've been dealing with weeds forever. Is there anything new with weeds? I mean, like, are there anything every once in a while that there's something that that something has come up? There are developments or things come into our area. Are there anything that you've heard of as somebody who's working with this? Yeah,
well, a hot topic we had last summer was spotted water hemlock. Jeff Stockler out of the Research Center in Carrington, he kind of started a social media movement about spotted water hemlock. This is actually one of the most toxic plants in North Dakota. It can kill a cow. If you touch it, it'll maybe leave like a burn on your hand. It's also very mistaken for a lot of other weeds. There's a lot of weeds that look like it, like wild carrot. It's got a big umbel flower. It flowers like white.
What do the leaves look like on
They're
it?
Kind of, it's hard to describe. They're kind of.
Yeah, show and tell on a podcast.
Yeah, like a carrot kind of. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Once you see it, it's very easy to spot. Again, I've seen it a couple times in Cass County. Actually, I had someone call that they had it growing in their pond in their yard, and they thought it was pretty, so they left it. And I was like, well, you might want to.
So is it in the carrot family? So kind of a little finer type.
Yep.
Leaves somewhat like carrot.
So it gets
how tall?
They can get very tall, like 4 feet maybe.
Oh,
yeah, you can see it standing out in the ditches. I saw it on Highway 46 last year. Some farmers have called me about having it. So if you see it and you can identify it, you probably don't want to touch it though, right? Yeah, do not touch it.
So how do you suggest handling it or not handling it in this case?
Well, I guess
addressing it.
You can spray it, but if someone were to come, hey, that ditch, and it gets into a bale, a cow can't pick that out very well if you grind it. So I guess removing it with gloves and like a suit that maybe like a chemical suit that doesn't touch you. Definitely don't pull it out with your bare hands. That might not be very fun later on. I would say pulling it's the best.
Have there been cattle deaths from this?
I believe so. Yeah, I think Jeff has found about one so far. But
sure.
Yeah, it's not an epidemic, but it was just kind of brought up last year that this is here. So if you see it, kind of keep an eye out for it. So.
Right.
But it sounds like it's something that's mostly it doesn't sound like it's something that most people are going to have to worry about in their own yard.
No.
But it's more in rural areas and ditches or
it really
fields.
likes water.
Okay.
So it's often growing near water. So.
And like you said, on that decorative pond.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
It was, yeah. So the possibility is there.
Mm-hmm.
Before a couple of years ago, I hadn't heard of water hemlock.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not everywhere, but.
Sure. But yeah, it's, in the way weeds spread, I'm sure it can. So I suppose it seeds, produces seed.
Yep.
And
It's
can
got
spread.
big flowers. Big umbel is what we call them.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. Kind of if you let a carrot go to seed the second year, then it looks like that. And so, the way that weed seeds spread, there's possibility that it could end up, I suppose.
Yeah.
I know extension agents are really busy, probably gearing up for the Red River Valley Fair. Are you going to be playing a role in that this summer?
Oh, yeah. The fair is my favorite time of year. Yes, I'm the ag agent. So I am in charge of all of the livestock related events at the fair. So we have a 2-day horse show, 2 days of a livestock show. We have a premium sale and a small animal and pet show. So that's the stuff that I get to be in charge of. But
what are the dates of the fair this year? Do you know?
Yes.
I've seen the dates, but I don't know exactly.
Yep. The fair runs July 3rd through the 12th. Our 4-Hers are in for static judging on July 2nd. So
I get to judge the vegetables.
Yep. So they'll be bringing all the projects in from baking to quilting to welding. So that's July 2nd. And then the horse show, I believe, is the 8th and 9th, 10th and the 10th is the small animal show. The 11th and 12th is the livestock shows. And then the 13th is the premium sale.
You're going to be busy.
Oh yeah.
And so for all of you that attend the Red River Valley Fair in Fargo, look for Lilly in her green NDSU shirt. Hopping madly between the livestock shows and the 4-H area. And yeah, it's a fun time.
It is.
So do you garden? I mean, obviously, do you have that experience?
Yeah.
But do you have the space now? Do you garden much?
I would love to garden, but I live in Fargo in an apartment, so I'm not able to. But when I go home, I take a stroll through. My brother likes to plant some squash and watermelon for fun. But yeah, my dad has a big garden. My grandma has a little one. So yeah. She used to have a bigger one, but she lives in town now. So
what would be the one thing? What would be if you had a garden? A little house garden, what would be one thing for sure that you would want to plant?
So if I had a flower garden, the first thing I would plant are lupins.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes, I love lupins. My grandma used to read me a book about them, so I just love them. And also peonies. I love peonies. And then if I had a vegetable garden, sweet corn. That's probably the thing I miss the most from the farm. Yeah. We used to plant rows and rows of it. Corn. Yep. Yeah, awesome. and strawberries. I'd plant a strawberry patch.
Of course. Now, it's interesting you mentioned lupins. Have you been up in the Duluth area in the summertime in like June into July?
No, I haven't.
The lupins are all over the place, growing wild.
Oh,
absolutely beautiful. And, of course, I obviously love that soil. I've had a little harder time getting lupins to grow. I'm not giving up. Going to maybe make it a little more mended, mulchy, organic type soil. And try to get lupins are beautiful. But yeah, if you're ever up in Duluth area in like June, they are all over the place.
That'd be really cool.
They are absolutely
I think
beautiful.
New Zealand's the same way where they grow all over. Yeah.
Oh.
I think they've got fields and fields of them. So I don't think they like that they have fields and fields of them. But.
Yeah, exactly. Good. Well, anything else, Lily? Anything else? This weed we mentioned, gardeners have been battling weeds, probably forever.
Yep.
So I don't suppose there's a miracle on the horizon yet.
No, I wish there was. I think we all do.
That's part of all this gardening, yard and garden and fruit growing and flower gardening. Part of it is it's the work that we dedicate into it, overcoming the weeds. And so, that challenge gives us a sense of accomplishment.
Yep, there's lots of learning to be done with it. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, well, this has been good discussion.
Yeah,
Lily, thanks a lot for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Great.
And Dawn, if people have questions for you, whether it's about if people have lupins that they've been successful growing, even from the Duluth area.
I want to hear the recipe for growing a beautiful lupin. Send me an email, donald.kinsler, KINZLER, @ndsu.edu.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. And Lily, thanks for being our guest.
Thanks for having me.
I'm motivated to get ahead of the weeds this year. This is going to be the year.
Well, it's cold enough. You might actually be able to this year.
This is going to be the year. Thanks again, Lily, for joining us.